Hello everyone and welcome to the Purple Curtain podcast. This is John.
This is Rusty.
And this week we're going to be talking about Reika's graduation and how it's affected us and how we think it might affect the group. We're also going to be talking about members who we've really been paying a lot of attention to recently. We've both got one third gen and one fourth gen. And we're also going to be talking about a ranking which came out in the 46 mode or mode 46. I can't remember which way around it is. Magazine, which asks the members various questions about their fellow members. So there's some interesting stuff in there. I think first thing to say about Reika's graduation is I haven't been taking it that well because Reika was my number 2. I've only had one Oshimen since I started following Nogizaka, which is Kazumin. But 3 of my number 2 members have graduated, Mai, Nanase, and Reika now. So it's not great. I was a really, really big fan of her. I kind of not really sure, how to feel as a fan right at this moment because, a lot of the members I really like have all been graduating in a small, short space of time, and I'm quite happy to continue being a fan of Nogizaka, but it's not great.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people have been taking this route, and it's pretty funny actually. The other day, like literally just the day before, I was talking with someone, and I think we saw somewhere. It might be a long time ago though, but basically Reika said something along the line that she's not gonna graduate yet because there's someone important to her in the group. And the next day she graduated. So it was kind of a nasty coincidence, I guess. And I didn't know when she said that, so it could be from a long time ago. And that specific person she's talked about, maybe she graduated. I mean, maybe it's Wakatsuki. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of feel as though the timing might actually match up on that because, Wakatsuki graduated several months ago, and I think Reika might have just been waiting long enough that the shock of so many consecutive graduations had died down a little bit before she decided to graduate herself.
Yeah. Well, it could be that they're making sure that there's a proper successor as captain too.
Yeah.
Since that's a hot topic discussion these days, since, she's our captain and now we're in your new one since forever pretty much, since she's been our captain since the very beginning.
I mean, we've been talking about this quite a lot recently, but we are obviously in the phase where the old guard is handing over to the new guard of the group. And I kind of feel as though Reika graduating is maybe the clearest indication of that, because as captain she was the heart of the group for quite a long time. She was a captain for a reason. She seemed to be pretty much universally liked, and it really felt as though she held things together behind the scenes. So it's not just the group itself, but it's the social dynamics within the group which are going to have to completely change after this.
Yeah, Reika was an interesting choice for captain, to be honest. My understanding back then is that she was the pretty clear choice early on, like management, and I'm not sure that the member had much of an input, but basically she was pretty much chosen from the very beginning, even though she was unwilling. And recently, when they have that psychometry therapy, just one episode show on NHK, and they got to talk with the other 2 captains, she mentioned that she never really wanted the job, and way back then it was kind of an interesting choice to a lot of fans as well, because we can always tell she's not the most headlong person, I guess. Like, she's not the one that to go around and tell people you need to do this, you need to do that. She doesn't command people like that. She doesn't lead people like that.
Nogizaka never had anyone like that anyway, though.
That's true. And I think what this lead us to is an interesting discussion about what exactly we are looking in a captain. Like we aren't actually necessarily looking for someone who's the boldest, who's the most commanding. Leadership isn't necessarily about that
I
in our
mean,
case.
I think if you look at AKB, the sort of commanding captains in 48 were never, they never actually really lasted that long. I think the only,
Mm,
I think the only, I think the only captain in 48 who, to a certain extent, fitted that profile and sort of, I think, did a good and long job would be Akimoto Sayaka. But,
mm,
Akimoto Sayaka had the flip side of being a very, like considerate and caring person as well. And
hmm.
I kind of feel as though that was what made her a good captain more than that sort of, um, like persona of being someone who would say, like follow me.
Hmm. That's true. I think one of the things that was revealed to us in that discussion between the three psychometry captain is that although they got to necessarily lead people onto the battlefield, so to speak figuratively, she's the type of person you can confide to. Like
Yeah,
if you have a worry, you have a concern, Reika's the one you can go and discuss. I mean, she's not the only one, but that's something she was good at. And I think maybe that was why she was chosen initially. She's someone that people can go talk about their worries, confide to, and not worry about being looked down upon or harshly treated.
and I
Because,
think it's partly about creating an atmosphere as well.
mm-hmm,
I think she was someone who, like, naturally had the ability to lighten the mood.
that's
And I
true.
think that's something which is quite often very
Overlook.
necessary when somebody's in
Mm-hmm,
charge.
that's true. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that brings us to the discussion about who do we think and who do other people think will become the next captain.
Yeah, well, I mean, there were a couple of things that I did want to say
Mm-hmm.
um, just before we move on was that um, I think one of the things which kind of came out to me when Reika was talking recently was that like Reika doesn't know the fourth gens,
Mm,
which is kind of something which seemed a little bit out of character, and it did make me wonder whether she's had more trouble, sort of like making a connection with the younger members. In a
mm.
sense, which does make me wonder whether now might have been the time to, like come up with a new captain to relate better to those newer members. Like, this isn't even really a criticism of her. It's just me sort of saying that maybe, if she wanted to hand over the captain position to somebody else, now might have been quite a good time.
Yeah, I can see that being true. I mean, Reika don't strike me as someone who will proactively approach people necessarily. It seems like she's the one that let people approach her. And being a first gen legend pretty much by now, I'm pretty sure it wasn't going to be easy for fourth gen to just approach her. And I think that created a situation where she might not be the most familiar with the fourth gen. And that definitely probably make being captain a little bit harder. And maybe that was part of consideration too, like that someone new who is more familiar and approachable to fourth gen take on the captain role.
Yeah.
And the transition seems right.
And I think Mayan said that, as far as she was concerned, Reika would always be the captain, which I think did lead a couple of people to speculate that there might not even be a new captain.
Mm,
But I do think that, like part of the reason why Mayan's saying that is because, Reika has been the captain for as long as she can remember.
mm-hmm,
And again, I think it's part of the fact that at a certain point, first gen is going to have to give up and pass over the group to the younger members, probably in third and fourth gen. and this is something which is happening now. You know, it's not something which is going to happen a couple of years in the future. It's something that's going to happen now, and what's going to happen is that rather than being the core of the group, first gen is going to be, you know, a couple of veteran members who people can rely on, but they're not going to be the core of the group anymore.
Yeah, I can see that being the case, although there are some still pretty young members in first gen, and maybe they'll be playing a more important role even going forward. But yeah, for a lot of the more established and more older member of first gen, I can see that they're either graduating or taking on a more supportive role. And maybe to a degree that's even true for some second gen member like Maijun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree with that thinking.
But I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, if we're talking about the original members of Nogizaka 46, you know, Reika will always be the captain for those people. But I think we're going to rapidly find ourselves in a situation where those people are not part of the present of the group. And, you know, like the members who make up the actual core of the group are increasingly going to be the younger members from third and fourth gen. So, you know, maybe the group itself has to change, and you know, like a new captain is part of that.
Yeah, I can see that logic. Besides just talking about her role as captain, though, I think it might be useful for us to talk about what we like about Reika as just a member, as an idol.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, like I just said that, you know, like Reika was my second favorite member since Nanase graduated. Like, I think maybe when I next do my Nogizaka ranking, I should just redact who number 2 is, because I think I'm starting to curse him a little bit. But it was just her personality. She was such a, you know, there was something about her personality which I think really appealed to a lot of people, you know, like members in the group. But there was something about, she always knew how to elevate the mood of the place she was in.
Yeah, I agree. For me, there's like many aspects of her, but I think two aspect is that there's this very interesting contradiction, I guess, in her. We know she's pretty goofy. She's famously our Ponkosu captain. She's not necessarily really reliable when it comes to simple things like cooking or doing things, right? Doing like everyday things. But she's also arguably one of Nogi's best singer and best dancer. And it's always a treat to see her perform. And it makes me wish that she got to center sometime. And hopefully, maybe she'll center the coming single, because
she won't, because the single's going to come out after she graduates a couple of days.
Yeah, it don't seem likely.
I'm not sure. I agree with you. I would have actually quite liked to have seen a Reika center, because she's well known enough. She's very popular with the fan base, so the fan base isn't going to not go out and buy singles because Reika was center, and she was very important. But I'm not sure I really want a kind of like posthumous single center, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get what you mean, and I can see people not wanting singles like the graduation singles, and considering how so much first gen is going to graduate, I mean, if we're giving out a graduation single every time, it's going to be the next set of 10
we're going to get stuck. I mean, I would have actually liked to have had a Reika center, but I'm not really sure I can really identify a song where I would rather have had her than the person they chose.
I would have liked to see her in their dance unit, like maybe Reika and Asuka. I mean, if Malika was still there, I would throw her in, and maybe in a way, like a unit that's focused on dancing. There used to be one with Asuka and Nanase, right, and Malika, right? That was pretty good. But I was ashamed that Reika isn't really included in this type of unit. She was included in the thinking unit with Misa and Ikujang, which I appreciate, even though I'm not a fan of the song. But yeah, I feel like her dancing is kind of overlooked.
So yeah, and I mean, I think there's also the fact that Reika has been slipping down in her position. Like her
Mm,
position in the formation has been sinking pretty rapidly over the past year or so. So this may have all been planned. Like Reika may have decided that the time had come for her to graduate.
hmm
Um, but it might also have just been a reaction to the fact that she's not as important in the group as she used to be.
mm. Yeah, that's possible. That's possible.
Which I also think is a shame. I think that's a shame even more than the fact that she never got to centre, which I think is a shame for like. I think it's a shame for like hardcore fans of the group who are particularly fond of her. But
Mm,
I'm not going to say it's like a faux pas on management's part or anything like that.
yeah, like there's a lot of other popular members who didn't get to center much, so I can see it not being as big a deal. I definitely wish she was in more special subunit though. Like I feel like there definitely space to do more of that, like the dance unit I mentioned, or maybe more of the singing unit where Ikujian and Misa before Misa graduated, of course. That's not possible anymore,
Mm.
unfortunately.
But anyway, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see, firstly, how the group sort of rearranges itself internally,
hmm
in terms of like, who are the supporting members, who are the upcoming members, who are the potential centre members, and all that kind of thing.
hmm
Um, and like as well.
There's this word? Pardon me?
Sorry, I think my microphone might have cut out a little bit there. As well as that, I also think that it's going to be interesting to see, um, you know, what will happen to the first and second gen members who were particularly close with Reika.
Mm,
So what we might see is we might see a situation where the group is rearranging itself both internally and externally, like in terms of the communication between members in the dressing room and sort of what members will actually remain in the group to be the public face of the group as well.
hmm
So, do you want to talk about who we think might make a good centre now?
You mean captain?
Captain, yes.
No worries. Yeah, I have several people in mind. There's interesting questions about each though. Like the first obvious answer for me is my June, but she's also pretty old and
Yeah, I mean, because I personally drew up a list of things which I thought would make a good centre. So there's the ability to empathise with members,
hmm
um, sort of like having a specific interest and sort of commitment to supporting the group.
hmm
So that's sort of things like, for example, like Mayan's very obvious and public love for the group.
hmm hmm
Someone who's probably not going to be centre because that would involve placing too much pressure on a specific individual.
hmm
And a kind of decent level of popularity, someone who is popular enough to be in Senbatsu, because that person will always be chosen for Senbatsu because they'll always be speaking for the group when they're on TV.
hmm
But the final thing I sort of put down was that they'll probably be in the group for a reasonable length of time.
hmm
Because if the captain keeps changing, it kind of makes the position slightly pointless.
Yeah. Yeah.
So quite a lot of the people who I thought would be good candidates for like every other criteria
hmm
fall down on the fact that they're old enough that we're not sure how much longer they'll be in the group, and that's the obvious concern with Maishin.
hmm Yeah, the reason I thought my gen and maybe second gen in general were a good choice because I feel like the people in this gen would be rather approachable to no matter um people who are newer like their kohais or different bias because second gen is quite intermingled with their first gen.
Yeah,
So my dream.
I think they'll be able to relate to
Mm-hmm.
both the first gens and the newer gens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and my June is kind of like Reika in the sense that she's someone that doesn't have this, that is not intimidating, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah,
Ma Yang, for example, even though she's goofy and kind-hearted, being Ma Yang is kind of intimidating to others to approach, right? But that wouldn't be a problem for Ma Jung, and it wouldn't be a problem for Reika, because they're both so goofy, and on when they're on varieties, they're often they're okay. Not saying they're you, but they're the one that people poke fun at
yeah.
for variety's sake. So they're approachable. But yeah, my Jun's problem is that she's the oldest member in the group. She might be graduating anytime soon herself, so that strike her off. But other possibility I thought of is Miona. Miona, which we know is famous for being very much a social butterfly. She seems to socialize with everyone, even people outside the group. So when it comes to that respect, she might be a good choice. Although I am personally not sure if she's going to be sticking around for long either. So that's also a concern.
I think the question about Miona and sticking around is that she's been getting work recently, hasn't she?
Yeah.
So because of her work, she might be tempted to leave the group to pursue that. But I'd say I think it really depends on whether Miona still wants to be center. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, we've talked about this before, and I think I'd be quite happy for Miona to be center again. But I think that even though management airdropped her, I don't think they fancy her for that role anymore.
Yeah, I don't think so. No, like I agree. Is what I'm saying.
But I think sometimes when it comes to members and their desire to center her versus their desire to be captain, I feel like there are some idols who become frustrated that they won't be center because they feel as though they lack purpose. So for a person like that, if you offer them the captain's role, they might actually be tempted by it because it's something which gives them a specific purpose within the group. Because I've never got the impression that Miona doesn't like being in the group. I think it actually means quite a lot to her. And as you said, I think she's got the social qualities to be a captain. Like maybe less so with first gen, but definitely with the members who are younger than her. And she's someone who would definitely be popular enough to be in the Senbatsu on merit every single time.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I'm thinking about, my old 48 Oshimen was Kitahara Rie. And, she mentioned several times that, her falling popularity was, her falling popularity made her want to leave the group even though she'd been identified as a potential center early on in her career. But when she was made a captain, that suddenly changed what she saw as being, her role in the group, and she suddenly felt as though, with the additional responsibilities, she now felt as though she was needed. And I think that's something which could potentially happen with Hori if they ask her to be the captain. I also think, there are a couple of other... When we were talking about second gen, I also thought that, if you're just looking at the specific qualities of a person, I thought Junna would have been a good choice. But the obvious caveat there is that Junna's not popular enough to be a natural Senbatsu member. And I think the captain would always have to be one because they'd be representing the group on TV.
That's
so,
true.
Anytime they sort of, performed at, Music Day or something, they'd probably ask her to be one of the members who speaks.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be very awkward if she wasn't one of the performing members as well.
That's true. Besides Miona and besides second gen, there's actually two other candidates from two other gen that I thought could be. I mean, they both also have their potential problem, but the first one is in my mind is Umezawa.
Yeah,
She
I mean,
I think
she's on my list as well.
yeah, she just makes sense. I think the only problem I see with her is that I don't think she's very familiar with her senpais, particularly the first gen people, and it would be a little bit. I have difficulty imagining her being the captain, like being presented as a captain to her first gen senpais. Like that feel like it might be awkward for her and it would be difficult for her.
Yeah, because she's not very assertive. I think she's got very. I actually think that while she's shy, I think she's got very good people skills.
Mm.
But I'm not sure she's. I think she would have a hard time, whenever a first or second gen was being lazy and uncommitted.
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
her personality means that it will be very hard for her to come down on like older members in the same way that she maybe might be able to do with the members in her own gen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can see her going after like I don't know Momoko for example, but not going after Asuka or Minami.
Yeah,
Yeah. The other person in my mind is Manazu, and she have the same potential problem as Mai Jung and others is that she might graduate. But she did mention once that she's sticking around till she's 46 years old. And
yeah.
if
Well,
that's true, we have a captain till, I don't know, 2030, 2040?
well, the N46 mode questionnaire, which we were going to talk about a little bit later,
Mm-hmm.
has Manatsu as the member which other members would be most likely to talk to whenever they had problems.
To come by to, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, Manatsu is someone who has always shown not only good people skills, I think she might be the most liked member within the group,
Mm-hmm.
but she's also shown a great deal of resilience as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Um, I think, infamously, a few first gen members found it difficult to talk to Manatsu early on in her career
Mm-hmm.
because she'd joined the group and she'd gone straight into a senpatsu role when members who'd been with the group from day one were left out,
Mm-hmm.
which I think caused quite a lot of resentment. But not only was she able to cope with that mentally, she also found it possible to reach out to members who had a negative impression of her.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't think that there's anyone in the group who Manatsu wouldn't be able to reach emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
So if it weren't for the potential age problems, Manatsu would actually have been the person who I would have picked as
Yeah,
captain.
yeah, I agree. I think if graduation was a concern, Manazu is the clear, obvious choice. Mahjong, type of Mahjong for me, but I think Manazu and Mahjong are the obvious choice if we don't need to consider graduation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, have you got any other candidates?
I think these are the main one I've been thinking of.
Because I have one last name who I wanted to put in,
Mhm.
and that's Matson,
Ah,
because I actually think that, again, she's someone with good people skills, but she's also one of the members who I think I wouldn't portray the relationship as sort of friendly, but she's definitely got the ability to communicate with the third and fourth gen members. And I think we all know that Matson is someone who kind of has had difficulties in the past that she's overcome.
Mhm.
I actually think, she's got quite a lot of inner strength. She's got people skills. I mean, again, just as with Manatsu and Maichin, the question is, does she have? Will she have the longevity to stay in the group for, like another 2 or 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
I know that she's got great enthusiasm for idols.
Mm-hmm.
She's definitely got the popularity to, you know, be part of the Senbatsu for the foreseeable future. I
Mm-hmm.
think Matsun's a bit of a left field choice because she's so, um, I don't know, she's really almost like a human cartoon. But
Yeah.
I actually think she would make quite a good left field choice for not centre, captain.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
unlike somebody like Miniman, who I kind of would quite like to be a potential centre in the future, Matson probably will never have that option available to her.
That's true. Yeah, June is indeed like an anime character, which is very appropriate considering that she did play anime character like not too long ago. June is interesting. I agree with most of what you said, but I do also see her as being one of the. I think she's more the type that needs to be ripped than ripping people. And not
Hmm.
saying leadership being ripping. I mean, like sometimes if you're lazing around and you need the extra push, the captain seems to be the one that's expected to give their job, right? But Majun is sometimes I feel like she's the one that needs the job, not and she doesn't
Yeah,
like
I mean, obviously, like, I can't ever see Manatsu playing the bad cop either. But I do
that's.
think Manatsu's got the ability to, like, give advice
Hmm.
forcefully.
Hmm.
Like, Manatsu, I don't think will ever kind of, like, shout and dress people down.
Mm.
But I think she has got the ability to come up to somebody and say, this is something you really have to do, like, for everyone's benefit.
Mm. And yeah, you can also say that Reika isn't the type to really, really forcefully
Hmm.
rally someone either. So you can argue if Reika was a good captain, then Majin can be a good captain too. And one thing Majin is really good at is promoting people. Selling Gogondan, like beside her, the other three members and have been historically much less popular than her, but she created Gundam and constantly give them promotion. Did that also, I think, like singing songs and covers in the 46 hours therapy thing they did back then, and have their own subunit songs to show them in fact and MVs and TV appearance and that kind of stuff. Like she's really good at promoting people, and she might be very good at promoting even more people if she's a captain. So that's definitely another aspect that we can look at.
Yeah, so I also think one last thing to consider is that I think Machen and Hori would be probably, like when the group's on TV, the captain will usually speak for the group, and then the center will speak for the group, and then maybe another popular member might speak for the group.
Mm-hmm.
I think Madsen and Hori in particular would be very good on TV. Sort of like promoting the group.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
But I think like those are our candidates. I mean, at this point, we don't even know whether the group will even select a new captain or not.
Mm-hmm.
They might actually leave the role completely open.
Yeah, maybe Loki will be a rogue group that don't believe in hierarchy.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
So I think the next thing we wanted to talk about is members who've really been appealing to us recently.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that personally, in the last couple of months, there have been a couple of members who've like really been on my mind quite a lot,
Mm-hmm.
who didn't really think about particularly when. So the two members I've been thinking a lot about have been Kuboshi
Mm-hmm.
since her return,
Mm-hmm.
and when Fourth Gen debuted, I quite liked Kaki,
Mm-hmm.
but my opinion of her has really been just rising exponentially in the last couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
Who were the two members you chose to talk about?
For me, it's Yoda and Seijang, which is Hayakawa Sarah.
Yeah, I've also been very interested in Hayakawa Seda as well, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you talk about her a little bit more than me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like since Kuboshi returned from her hiatus, I think, before her hiatus, I felt as though, like her worries were kind of oppressing her to the extent that she couldn't bring her true personality out fully.
Mm,
Like she is someone who does seem to worry about things quite easily.
that's true.
Um, but since then she's been like very, very positive, and you can see that not only is there a kind of bright and optimistic person there, but there's also a very kind one.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone who, really seems to get on well with other people, and we talked about that survey before. Manatsu was considered the person who members were most likely to trust with talking about problems they've had.
Mm-hmm.
But Kuboshi is in there as well, at number 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, when she first came into the group, Kuboshi was seen as, like a future potential ace. She
Mm-hmm.
seemed to be a favourite of management. And that was something which, as she maybe struggled ever so slightly with the pressure of being an idol, fell away.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the possibility has actually opened back up for her again there.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely want to see more of her. I don't know was she ever a favorite of management because like if we look at their first song, Samba Me no Kaze, the front three was Momoko, Yoda, and Mitsuki, right? So
Yeah.
I think in the preference of management, she always ranked below those three at least. And so I'm not sure that she have a chance to be a center, but I definitely would like to see her be center one day. And I think she have great personality, and she's definitely someone I want to see more on TV too. And you can tell she really is like she really like to be with everyone. She's a big Nogi fan before she joined Nogi, and you can still see that in her eyes, in the way she interacts with others after she joined Nogi. In fact, some people call her like the biggest DD in the
Mm.
group because she seems to like everyone and try to be with everyone. So it's she's really lovely, and she's also a really good singer. So we have a total package here, and she's definitely someone I would like to see more.
Yeah, and the singing element is important as well because I think we all know that Ika-chan's graduation will come at some point.
That's true.
And the group does need all the vocal talent it can get because Ika-chan is so responsible for the vocals on the recorded material.
hmm That's true.
But yeah, I really like her. I think, when it seemed as though everything was just oppressing her slightly and she couldn't handle the pressure, I felt sorry for her, but I think I only I've only really realised what a great member she has the capacity to be since she came back. Because
hmm
it seems as though shared she's shed quite a lot of the fears that I think she may have had.
Mm,
I think she used the time when she was away to kind of focus on what she wanted from the group, how she should approach things, and it seems as though she's sort of come back not just with more optimism, but with more confidence.
mm. Yeah, I can see that. I think it's good to see her coming back stronger than before, and I'm pretty sure that will bode well for her in the future. So even though she might not be management favorite, in my opinion, I think if she can continue to persist, it's still possible to see her in center one day.
Um, And the other member who I've really been thinking a lot recently is Kaki, who is Kaki Hadaka from 4th Gen. Because when 4th Gen came in, Kaki made quite a good first impression on me, but nothing really, nothing huge. Do you know what I mean? But since that point, I've kind of just started to think maybe she's actually a bit of a super idol. Because, like when I see her, she's very, very energetic, she's very, very bright, and she's also funny as well.
I think, yeah.
And, yeah, like, also, just really, really cute as well, and, like, really good in photo shoots and everything.
No, I think I agree. I think she's definitely have those qualities, and the best proof of that is the fact that every 4th Gen is fighting over her. Like, she's a super boyfriend, apparently.
Yeah.
Like, there's even the scene in one of the showroom where Seijang and Kaki and Mayu were on, and a viewer said, like, I forgot what the viewer said. Like, one of the showroom person said, Kaki is someone's boyfriend, I forgot who, and then Seijang's like, no, she's mine, and then Mayu like, no, she's mine, and so it's like, no, she's mine, and then Mayu's like, actually no, we're recognized, and Kaki's like, yep, I'm Mayu, and it was kind of cute to see the jealous Seijang there. But yeah, like they mentioned before, I forgot who mentioned it, but 4th Gen mentioned every 4th Gen is like fawning over Kaki, and they all love her, and they all want her to be their boyfriend and that kind of stuff. And it makes sense. Kaki was the one that kept running the Romeo role way back in their 3rd Gen principle. So I think she's definitely very charming, and at the very least, she's able to charm all her fellow 4th Gen members. And judging by handshake style, she's definitely charming people, fans who go see her as well.
Yeah, and one thing I would say is, the Gakutabi episode, which, like I think changed quite a lot of my Twitter timeline's impression of 4th Gens. That showed Kaki as being someone who gets nervous backstage, but is actually very confident when it comes to being an idol, like when she's on stage or when she's on camera. She always seems like someone who's confident about bringing out her best qualities and showing them.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that's true, and that's a very good quality, to be honest. Like, imagine if you're going to do a presentation and like you're nervously sweating just before practicing, but once you go on, you're like you give a pitch perfect presentation. Like, being an idol, I think that's a perfect quality, actually.
So yeah, I think management's chosen members early on, so people like Sakura and Rei and Ayame are probably still the people at the forefront of management's minds when they're thinking about 4th Gen. But I think that Kaki is a member who has the potential to become a dark horse and become one of the members who management start to recognise through fan approval. Because that is something that happens in Nogizaka. Like, if you become popular enough with fans, then management will respect you and start using you. So yeah, I think Kaki's a member who's got the potential, in that sense, to become a very important member.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Sakura is decently popular herself, but just because you're chosen by management at first, it doesn't guarantee your success. Like, Momoko, which we all love, it's clearly not the most popular version, even though she was the chosen one by management early on. So there's no guarantee for Sakura, and she might very well be overtaken by Kaki.
Yeah. So, we're both interested in Sei-chan, so do you want to talk a little bit about her?
Sure. Sei-chan just seems like the total package to me. So I think I don't know about you, but I first noticed her when they did the 4th gen introduction thing in the Nokia app, and I thought she was cute, and that's the first thing. I think that's our first impression. She's cute, right? But that's not in itself necessarily very impressive, I guess. Like, it's not doesn't necessarily give you a deep impression, but later on, we know she did very well with the 3rd gen principle. And I think I really started liking her a lot more is after the Gaku Tabi app. And you can see that she's very friendly, approachable, but also one thing that struck me is that she had very good posing. And I think that's because of her ballet lesson. And to be fair, many others in Noki also took ballet before, but I guess she's one of the stronger ballet performer because you can see when she's doing the drumming, and it's not just drumming, pure drumming for the Gakutabi app they were doing some sort of performance, so the posture was really important as well. And I think it's fair to say that Seijang have by far the best posture of among all the 4th gen that were there performing at their school. And I like that. It struck me quite, gave me a good impression. And to add to that is her personality, of course. She seems very sweet and personable. And clearly, I'm not the only one that thought so. We were talking about that ranking thing where the members wrote for each other on various different topics. For Seijang, she did really, really well. Like, she was 2nd among all members when it comes to member you will combine to. So she was only behind Manazu with 5 votes. And there was another thing where there's 2 other things where it's talk about look. One is hidden best body, and she got 3rd. She got 4 votes, and also beautiful hair. She got 5th praise with 3 votes for the prettiest hair.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it does seem as though among the 4th gens, like, firstly, they sort of like look up to Seda as, like a reliable person.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like, a lot of 4th gen are also envious of her looks as well. So it kind of feels as though, like, for 4th gen, like, Seda does actually feel like a kind of aspirational figure, which is interesting.
Yeah, and there's one more thing to rank in, and that's hardworking.
Yeah.
She's third just behind Mizuki and Ikujiang, and she also got 5 votes there. So I don't know about what other people think, but this looked like the total package to me. She apparently is not only someone who even Nogi member think is beautiful, but also someone who have strong character, is personable, but also hardworking. And you can see that in the Gakutabi app, so it's just very appealing. I think she's a very good idol, and that's why I was so bemused and so surprised, I guess, when I realized she wasn't.
I think the thing which will eventually swing things in Seda's favour and make her a popular member is the fact that, like, she's got a good face, she's got a good personality, but she's also surprisingly funny. And I think that's the thing which is eventually going to win people over for her.
I can see that, and I do think things are already turning in her favor. Like, her in the first few rounds, her handshake wasn't really selling, but later on, as far as we can see, it did so out. So
yeah, it seems as though people are starting to come back to her handshake, which is one of the most important things.
Yeah, so I'm definitely hopeful about what she can achieve in the future. And on a not completely related topic, I think maybe if there ever comes to the far future and there needs to be a new captain again, maybe she would be a choice.
Yeah, Seda feels as though she might be a good choice for the next captain.
Which is far into the future, probably.
So you wanted to talk about Seda and also Yoda?
Yeah, Yoda, which is probably a real choice for members are interested in, since I'm pretty sure most people been interested in her since day one. Well, that's the funny thing. I wasn't interested in her in day one. Part of it's just me being more lukewarm, I guess, to newer people, newer gen people. I'm always a little bit less enthusiastic about these new gen, maybe partly because I feel, as someone who liked the earlier gens, I feel like their position is threatened, and that's not a nice feeling, when it comes to these newer gen, especially if these newer gen are pushed over some of their some member that's been around for a long time and haven't really gotten something equivalent. So we all know second gen and unders haven't really got too much of a chance compared to third gen, for example. So that sometimes is a bit of a sore taste. So back then, third gen didn't really initially immediately interest me. Yoda, everyone thought Yoda was really cute and very adorable, and I can kind of see that, but I thought she was okay. Like she's like, yeah, I guess I can see the childlike charm. She's short and chippy, rich. But yeah, that's, I don't know. It didn't really.
Can I just sort of like share with you what made me think Yoda was cute from day one?
Sure.
It's like in a similar way to Kaz.
Mm-hmm.
Like when she smiles, she sort of like gets the sort of like creases at both corners of her mouth.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that sort of like always really got me from day one.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, that's fair. Mm-hmm.
I think
can
Kaz has the same thing, and it's one of the things I always like most about the way she looks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. So so it's been around since the earliest day, obviously, and I think for me, I've been paying more and more attention as time goes by, and part of it is just that feeling I described initially fading away as newer gen get integrated into the group a bit more.
I think the other thing is, feeling defensive about the original gen members is something which is inevitably going to start fading as, like the original gen members are leaving.
That's true.
There's not so much to feel defensive about because third and fourth gen members aren't really taking those members' spaces or anything like that anymore, because those members increasingly just aren't even there, so you can't take somebody's spot if they're not there.
That's true.
And if management still won't give spots to second gen members, then they're never going to. There's not really much you can do about that. So
yeah, I think another thing is that once you get to learn more about the newer gen, you come to see them more as the individual they are, rather than some random new people that just airdropped it and is taking up space. You know what I mean? And I think the most important thing for me about Yoda is that she's just pretty darn funny.
Yeah, I know.
She's hilarious, and not necessarily in a way that's like outlandish or just like, it's not pure variety, it's not pure slapstick. It's just all the little thing that add up.
I actually think that, interestingly enough, Yoda and Asuka are quite often funny in the same way.
That's true.
That's true. That, like their facial expressions are so incredibly on point.
Yeah, and they do many of these little things that it's not necessarily obvious, but it's quite funny if you pay attention to them, and it's stuff I appreciate. Yoda have so many of these little quirks, and it's fun to follow them. Like, she keep talking about her height, and she keep on trying to get herself teased by Asuka, and some others too. And there's always these episodes of her with Animal, and those often go off in hilarious directions. And
I also think there's something really, really impressive about the way she's always playing off what's going on. Like, if you watch her, she's never not paying attention to what's going on.
And she's always reacting to them with
Yeah.
expression that's quite noteworthy. Yeah, and in this process, I kind of appreciate her look more too. Like, I mean, I feel like maybe they're just become prettier. I think that's often the case. They've just become prettier. That's part of it. But the other part of it is that I often feel like I come to like their appearance of people more once I actually just come to like them more as a individual, as a person as well. Like, for example, when Nanamin first appeared in the very first Nogi the collab, she seems okay. But once I come to like her more, she suddenly seems even prettier, even more beautiful. And I think for Yoda, that's a similar phenomenon. Once I got to appreciate her more and like her as an individual more, she's suddenly even cuter.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. Which is pretty odd, to be honest. But I think that's a real phenomenon for me.
So yeah, I always really liked Yoda, but I can also relate to a lot of what you've been saying. So yeah, they to sort of wrap things up, like those are the 4 members we've been, like not just into, but I know that I've really been thinking about Kuboshi and Kaki a lot over the past couple of months. I might not have posted about them as much as some other members maybe, but they're definitely members who've been on my mind, like a lot of the time. So I'm really interested to see what they do next.
Yeah, I agree, and it's good to see that people are catching our attention, even though some people are leaving. Like, it tells us the future of the group is pretty bright, even though a lot of people that we love for so long are moving on to something else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if fans lose interest in the group because the members they like have started to graduate, that's something which is, that's fine. I can understand that feeling, I can respect that feeling, but personally, when I look at the members in 3rd and 4th gens, I see not just a lot to be optimistic about, but I also see a really strong sign that I'll be interested in the group for a long time to come, because there are lots of very interesting members there who I can really get behind.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'd say that I genuinely can't think of a 3rd or 4th gen member that I know you might not be able to say this as emphatically as me, but there really isn't a 3rd or 4th gen member who I don't like.
Yeah, I think first gen is a incredibly strong generation. In fact, I think they're so strong that I'm a little bit worried about 4th gen ending up like 2nd gen, especially considering the gap between, like the time gap between 4th and 3rd gen is kind of similar to the gap between 2nd and 1st gen, and in those situations, the 2nd gen often get overshadowed by the earlier gen, right?
I mean, my personal feelings about 3rd gen and 4th gen are very similar to my personal feelings about 1st and 2nd gen as well. Because, 3rd gen, I think, like 1st gen, is full of really strong members who I also like. So, idols who've got very high quality as an idol, but also personalities who I really like as well. Whereas 4th gen, similar to 2nd gen, I feel, doesn't have that same kind of innate idol power, but is full of members who I really like on a personal level, and who I think really bring a lot to the group, even if they maybe don't have the potential to be quite as famous or big.
Yeah, that's a fair way to describe it, I think.
Because I'm not just talking about their power as an idol; it's also about the way I react to them as well. But I think before we close things out, we wanted to move on and talk a little bit about this survey, which was in the N46 Mode magazine, which is members voting on their fellow members in various categories.
Mhm.
So, did you want to lead off us talking about this?
Sure. Um, there's like, I think they have 17 votes, and it's on also a different topic. Like, we mentioned a few, like the most hardworking member, the smartest member, the hit a nice body, the singing and dancing. I don't think we are going to go through them all because
There's a lot.
there's scans on online, so you can find that and read it yourself. What I'm more interested in is the one that surprised me, like the one I didn't expect. Most of them, I feel like I look at them and I nod my head, like, yeah, that makes sense. One of the ones that kind of surprised me is it's the singing and dancing one, and I'll mention the singing one first. For the singing one first, the first is Ikujan, which makes sense. The third one is Reika, which also makes sense. But the second one is Juna.
Yeah, which interested me as well.
Yeah, I think Juna's problem is that we don't get to see her sing much, so it's harder for us to reference her apparently good singing. But apparently she's pretty good, and that's something that's probably not getting appreciated enough.
I mean, it makes sense because Jinna has been in a lot of musicals recently, hasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that interests me here is, was Jinna always a good singer, or is this something which has maybe been developed in the past couple of years as she started to actually practice her vocals for these musicals more? And
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's interesting, you know, in all these categories, you've got the number of votes from members within the group,
Mm-hmm.
but it also says a few of the members who voted for each specific individual. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting to note that one of the people who voted for Jinna was Ranza, and
Mm.
another one is Kuboshi, and I believe she's worked on musicals with both those members.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's another thing that surprised me is that I didn't see Kubo ranking among everyone. I mean, she might be fourth, but the fact that Kubo voted for Juna, I think, is testament that Juna is very, very good.
Yeah, it's
Us,
interesting.
yeah, Asuka also voted for Juna, so that's another testament. And do you remember the Juna sing in the karaoke contest thing they did for 46 hour shows
I
way back?
don't. I really don't remember at all. Sorry.
Uh, no worries. I remember there was a few member missing, and I'm not sure if Juna is one of them. If she did sing, and we can listen to it, and because I remember the few that struck me very deeply, like Kalin struck me really deeply, Chiharu struck me really deeply because it was pretty darn good. I don't remember Juna, so either she didn't get to sing that time, or she did, and it wasn't memorable. And if it wasn't memorable for me back then I think for me that tells me Juna improved a lot. But she might just have not sang. That's why I don't remember it.
Yeah.
hmm So that's singing, and then there's dancing. Dancing surprised me way more than singing because the winner, the top one is Media with 10 votes, and the second is Kana with 9 votes, and then there's Asuka and Reika with 7 votes. Like, Media is also like Juna in that we don't get to see her dance too much, but we do get to see her dance a few times, and I thought it was okay. So when I saw her being in top place, I was honestly quite surprised. What do you think
Yeah, I
about it?
mean, and also, like, again, it lists the members, and, you know, Midia got votes from, like, not just her contemporaries, but, like, senpai members and
Reika.
kohai members as well,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, so, and I actually, I think I just read something today or yesterday about someone. I forgot who was it from, but someone was needing dancing help and media help. I think it's fourth gen. So I suspect one thing that helped Media is that she's one of those members that can easily remember moves and help other members with their moves, and that's possibly why she's up there.
Yeah.
hmm
I think there is also, like, a rather disturbing aspect to this as well, which is that, um, when you look at like the three names which are given are Miria, Kanarin, and then Asuka and Reika in joint third place. All of those members except for Asuka kind of like have question marks about how long they'll be in the group, and Reika's already graduated. So it does kind of make you wonder, like, you know, should we be worried about Nogizaka's dance skill in the future? Because I've always thought that Nogizaka's vocal skill is better than their dance skill. Because most of the Nogizaka members are kind of okay singers, at least.
That's true. Hopefully it's just a case where some of the newer, younger member dancing just haven't either developed or been proven yet. Hopefully that's the case, but it's kind of hard to tell, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing that interests me a lot is that Asuka and Reika are both someone who I quite like their dancing, and the way I judge dancing is most importantly by their posture. If their dance look good, like people can do the same dance move, people can all memorize the same dance move, but I think the really good dancer are the one who can make the move look good, and that's not something everyone can do. And Reika and Asuka, although sometimes they make mistakes when they dance, so you can say they're not the best dancer on that respect, but I think they're some of the best dancer because they can make moves look very good. So I was a little bit surprised to see them behind Miria and Kana. But yeah, maybe Miria and Kana are very good at the other aspect. Like I mentioned, they can always do the dance move quickly and they're always technically correct. Maybe that's something that's been appreciated more. But yeah, I don't know, it's a bit hard to tell.
But yeah, I think like looking at these categories, I think there are like some interesting things which come out. I think we've already talked a little bit about the members who other members would consult when they have problems. So we might as well go through the whole ranking there. So number 1 is Manatsu, and it kind of feels as though it's like the slightly older members all seem to go to Manatsu when they've got problems.
Possibly, yeah.
Number 2 was Sei-chan. You know, and all the members who have voted for her are 4th gen members. So it seems as though she's like the 4th gen, like unofficial leader.
Yeah.
And the same is true with Miniman, who comes 3rd, because all the members who said that they would consult with her are 3rd gen members. With Kuboshi, it doesn't say who voted for her. But it's also interesting to note that there's 2 members who got 2 votes, and they are Hinachima, like Higuchi Hina, which is like not very surprising, you know, like she's very, very nice. So I kind of get the impression that members who kind of want to be not just asking someone who they think will give good advice, but also like sympathetic advice will go to her. Although I'd say she's also like very mature, so that plays a role too. But interestingly, there's 2 people who were also voted for Mizuki.
Yeah.
And I find that interesting because Mizuki is not... I mean, Mizuki's like friendly enough with her fellow members, but she's not famous for it.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite interesting that not only did members say that Mizuki was a very hard-working member, but she's also like a member who they would consult when they had problems, which makes me think that she, you know, like internally might be like a very adult member.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And a thing that interests me about this is that there's so many versions, and so it's like spread out for them, whereas it's a bit more focused for 4th gen. Although we don't know exactly who voted for who, but we do know that all of the people who voted for Sei-chan are 4th gen. So maybe there's a more clear leader when it comes to 4th gen, whereas for 3rd gen, although Umezawa is pretty reliable. There's also a few others people can look up for help, and it's not necessarily just one person.
Another thing which is nice is the fact that, one of the questions is which member do you think has the best personality?
Mm-hmm.
So Kaz, Manatsu, Hinachima, and Yuri, the fourth gen Yuri, were all voted for, but number 3 in this ranking is everyone.
Mm.
And that's just really, really nice to see.
Mm-hmm. I do often feel that Nogi is a group where people get along, and I think digging through all these interviews and other kind of like documents we have, it pretty much proved that this is true. And I think this ranking is, I think, 5 people voted for everyone, which is quite a lot. And Manatsu and Katsumin are both famous for being approachable, and there's a lot of people like that too in a group, right? Like my for example, was famous for that back then, and it paints a picture of a group that's pretty harmonious, I guess, and I appreciate that a lot.
Also, question number 7 is, which member's personality do you find the most
Mysterious?
mysterious, difficult to unpick? Which is, Asuka wins this by a landslide.
Mm-hmm.
So Asuka truly is our mysterious leader and center who normal people cannot understand.
She's quite enigma, eh?
I think it's interesting that the members like Asuka, but they also find her very difficult to read and understand.
Maybe the mysticness of it is appealing. One thing that was about this one is one of the surprising ranking for me, because I was expecting Kotoko to be way up.
Yeah.
But she only got 2 votes, and she's in 5th place.
Maybe people just consider Kotoko to be bizarre, which isn't very mysterious.
Well, maybe they all think she's a really... I mean, they're Japanese, so maybe, I don't know, maybe it's the right word, but she's otaku, right? Like, you're like, oh, she's just otaku. Whereas Asuka is a bit more mysterious than that.
So, I also think, one thing which interested me was the ranking of members who are seen as working the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ika-chan comes first, which isn't a huge surprise, because as well as being one of the most important members of the group, Ika-chan also does loads of work outside as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ika-chan coming in first isn't that surprising, but what surprised me more was that Mizuki came second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I think a lot of people got the impression that Mizuki is very, very driven. But it's interesting to see that confirmed. And also, if you look at the list of members who said that they were impressed by how hard Mizuki works, they're all members who are older than her.
Mm.
Sorry, or not necessarily older, but who've been in the group longer than her.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, I don't think this aspect of her is necessarily obvious. Like, so I think sometimes we can get a sense that she's driven, but I think it was generally surprising for quite some people to see her breaking second when it comes to who member consider very hardworking. So it kind of shows her internal dynamic and shows that inside the group, Mitsuki might be favored not just simply because she's popular and she's able to appeal to people and push people, but also because she's a hard worker, right? And she's also someone who got 2 roll on who you would come by to. So there's multiple aspects of her that's appealing to people.
And also, we already talked about Sei-chan being number 3.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it's interesting that Yuri was at number 5. And I found that interesting because Yuri has a very kind of laid back and slightly slow persona. So
Yeah,
the fact that she's seen as being one of the hardest working members by the other members of the group is very interesting to me.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't fit our initial image of her. She seems very my pace, and which is like my pace don't exactly line up with hardworking.
And another one which I found interesting is the next ranking, which is the member considered to be most intelligent by other members.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the top three is unsurprisingly Manatsu, Renachi, and Kanadin.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, the interesting thing here is that I almost thought that Manatsu was nailed on to be number one here, and Kanadin is number one instead.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes me kind of like wonder, does Kanadin have a lot of like practical knowledge? You know, like maybe Kanadin's actually really, really good at like practical, real-world problem solving, which is why she's been voted number one.
I can see that because even though she came number one in the test, there was that time when they did a few quiz in good old Nogi 10, and she made some definitely wrong answer. Well, baffling to me, but maybe it's not less baffling to the panelists. But
because it feels as though Manatsu and Renachi are more academic, but Kanadin might actually have the most like natural intuitive intelligence out of all of them.
Possible. One other interesting comment about this ranking made by someone I saw on Twitter is that it seems like all the smart members in Nogi are pretending to be dumb.
Yeah. Because well, let's talk about number 4 and 5 as well, because number 4 is Matsun and number 5 is Kaz. Matsun and Kaz are both kind of members who, if you don't watch them carefully, you might think they're kind of dumb because they're kind of very goofy, relaxed, and also they never really seem to like make any attempt to kind of prove their intelligence to anyone.
Yeah, and the same can pretty much be said of Manatsu too, and to a lesser extent Kanadin. Like the only one that if you're now a fan and you just glance at them and look at them on Nogi2 or something, that will strike people as intelligent, probably Renachi.
Renachi's really the only one here who's not acting dumb.
Yeah, so that was a pretty interesting comment, and
because it was pretty obvious to me for like a long time that actually Matsun is very smart despite her kind of like slightly wacky persona. But I guess it's just nice to see it like clearly acknowledged by the other members.
Yeah, because like Adam OD's vote is probably over half a group, so it's pretty much recognized that these people are the smart ones, and we see them on TV and in other places, and the way they act is quite an interesting contrast.
So, one last thing is I wanted to talk about the ranking of members who make other members laugh. So number 1 is Kaz, not much of a surprise. Number 2 is Maya. Again, not much of a surprise. Like, personally speaking, I find Maya to be like just the outright funniest member in the group. But number 3 was one which quite interested me, which was Ray. Because Ray kind of came into the group with quite a sort of like straightforward persona, but I've kind of been noticing that actually Ray's quite funny, and I feel as though she's like consciously limiting herself when she's on TV. Like I think she's a little bit scared still to actually make jokes, but I think she's got really a lot of potential there. And I kind of feel as though maybe like her her fortunes as an idol might be determined a little bit by how much she can bring that out.
Yeah, Ray was definitely a surprise for me. The other surprise is that both it's mostly card A. I mean, Media is also in 5th place, but Media is...
number 4 is Hazuki, which is not that surprising.
Yeah.
Number 5 is Media, and Kaide, on the same number of votes.
Yeah, and Kaede is more of a surprise to me than Milia. Like Milia is not a funny character, but sometimes she is also pretty hilarious. So I can tell why Milia's up there. And I think what this tells us is that when it comes to their personality behind the scene in the restroom when they're not on TV, Ray and Kaede are both pretty interesting and pretty funny. And
Den-chan is a little bit like deadpan and lazy, which kind of is a kind of style of humor which is very hard to translate into variety because it's too passive. Whereas she feels like the kind of person who might actually be really funny in the dressing room where there's lots of stuff to play off.
yeah, like on the variety show, Dan generally needs someone to play off her, and maybe Shilata can do that, for example. But like if no one's playing off you, it's can be a bit difficult to translate that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, like those were like all the rankings which interested me while I was going through this. But if you've got anything else to add,
no, I think I'm good. I mean, the one that interests me, the one that I found surprising, I already mentioned. The other one mostly makes sense to me, and we probably want to avoid going over every single one of them, right? So I'm good, I guess.
Yeah. So we've covered everything we wanted to today. Mostly just talking about, I think that the absence of Reika is really going to transform the group. I don't really know how at this particular moment in time, but personally I'm actually, I love the original generation Nogizaka members, but I've also had quite a lot of time with them. So while I sort of like personally feel quite sad about all the members graduating, I still feel a great sense of excitement to see what third and fourth gen are going to be able to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I see it, and it's not just a bad thing; it is also an opportunity as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely sounds like a time for Noki to see what the new gen can bring us, and that can only happen if there's space free up, I guess.
So, have you got anything you want to say before we sign off?
No, I think I got everything covered.
Okay, so then that's goodbye from me, John.
And that's bye from me, Rusty.